Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:31. I'd like to recognize Thayer Tomlinson, Lisa Berry, and John Fish. We have rules of procedure. They're on the table and they're also posted online if anybody's interested. And from time to time, I need to call attention to them. Are there new additions to the agenda for this evening?
Nope,
No. Are there changes to the agenda order?
nothing to worry about.
Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes of the meeting of January 22nd, 2018?
Yes.
And is there any discussion? Would anybody like to make a motion to accept the minutes?
Oh, there was one thing that I didn't understand. Let me just get to it. It was, oh yes, well, the part in number 7, the select board estimated that after the amendments, the highway budget would come in at slightly more. The part in italics, at the bottom, it was later discovered.
Under new
I
business,
didn't
7 under
know-
new business?
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have said that. I didn't know whether that was information that we didn't have at that meeting.
It is.
Oh, okay, then I'm fine. I just
Yeah, we had
wanted to make
looked
sure
at
it
some
wasn't.
totals and they were not, they did not represent what was said at the meeting.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to make sure we corrected the minutes to reflect the actual totals, not what we,
Okay.
we're
No, well, that
working
was
from
the
that
only
night.
thing I,
right.
So I had one. Can you,
Oh,
since
number
you have
4.
It, oh, you have another one?
oh, well, let's see. I think I understand number 4 in, let's see, what is that under? New business. Number 4, let's see, there was a discussion of whether technology fee would be better characterized as software and the difference between that and technical support. Conclusion is no.
Awkward sentence.
Oh, okay, so no,
There was
no, it would not be
That'd
better
be better to categorize
characterized.
it as software.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I just,
I think we could also just say there's a discussion about this and leave it at that if there's no action.
okay,
I mean, that's another way of
just-
doing it and keeping it shorter. I'm
Yeah.
always a fan of
So do you want to
brevity.
amend it that or?
Sure, we can amend it that way. And I guess when we do a motion, we'll take it with that amendment and
Sure.
then.
No, did
Oh,
you
no,
have
I
something?
do, but
Oh,
can you
I'm
scroll
sorry.
down since you were so
Which
confused?
way,
All the way to the bottom in the executive session after we came out.
Just keep on.
Okay, oops.
Whoopsies.
Oh yeah, under the executive session E, I actually was confused by this and I've been there, so I thought it maybe bore more explanation. Gordon moved to accept conveyance. I think that maybe should, I mean, I didn't know what that meant when I read
didn't
it.
pick that up.
So,
What
I mean, I
conveyance
think
was
we
that?
should, accept the agreement between, to convey the land and do parcel number, whatever, between the town and BBCC, or however you want to characterize it. And to post it in accordance with legal requirements.
Is this in the executive session or?
Right, we came out.
I had it down at the bottom.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, it's E.
Oh, conveyanced for, okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
we
just to
were-
clarify
to-
what that is. I
To
wasn't-
explain, why don't we just
Are you
continue
in
the
there? Do you want me to
sentence?
do that?
Thank you, Gabby.
Opening
for
it up
taking
right
that.
now.
And then I would also ask that I abstained due to a conflict of interest, just so that all that
Yeah,
is
that's
clear.
good. Yeah, that's
I
good.
thought
Yes,
about that when
that's
I
a
read
good
it. and-
point.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, because it was, yeah. Oh, my goodness, so you're
You're
in my
gonna do
machine.
you're changing the other thing.
Wow, this is really exciting. Are
It's a
you in
Google
my
job.
machine
Technology at its
entirely?
best.
You're sharing.
Oh, I see. So you're not going to revise my poems, Peter? Okay, just asking.
So would somebody like to,
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I think that signature page is separate, so we could actually still sign the
Yes, you may.
signature
Well, I
page.
think it's good that we all read them.
I also think
Very important.
it's weird to have a signature page that's blank because then it could be attached to anything. So my suggestion is always to have the last line of whatever we do be the first line of the signature page, so it can't just be
Okay.
popped onto
So
something else.
how about we will
We'll just sign it next time.
sign it next time?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank everybody
Good
for reading.
suggestions.
Do you
So-
want to type while you, or you're doing a general highway update?
Yes, I happened over to grab a little sand today, and I saw Dan. So Dan gave me his update. Basically, the road crew's been extremely busy, I think, as we all know, sanding, salting, plowing, sanding, salting,
Repairing equipment.
and
Rinse and
repairing
repeat.
equipment. The good news is our loader's back, so that's positive. We got rid of, got the rental out of here. We're still unclear, as Dan's unclear as to whether or not Deere's gonna stand behind any of it from a
Oh,
warranty
right.
standpoint, because there have been multiple machines like ours having the same issue. We're about 95% of our sand budget is done. We have probably visually about a third, I would say, still in the shed, in the sand area. I think I'm generous in that, but so Dan, I think, is going to be looking to maybe need a little more sand. We're about 64% on our salt budget, and we've got about 2/3, I think, of our salt shed full. So he's not as concerned about the salt at this time. That was the update. He didn't give me any hard numbers, and I said, well, what does that mean in terms of how much more sand we might need? And he said, well, let's just see what the weather brings. The last thing he wanted me to mention was he thinks with his senior experience, we're going to have one hell of a mud season this year.
Yeah.
I think he's right.
I think
Just
he's
what we
probably
need.
right, too. He said not to quote him.
He was right about the winter.
Yes, he was.
So, my understanding is that we may go over budget in sand this year. But I think we will be able to find the funds someplace to cover that, and I don't think it's a big problem. I'd also like to note that on Sunday, Danny was also putting sand out at the Old Town Garage for residents to use, so and this was after a long night of sanding, because the roads were really bad on Saturday night, so again,
Yes.
It's
much
been
appreciation to the road crew.
And everybody's driveways. I mean, we're
Yeah.
going to be having broken hips in our elderly town. Oh, sorry. Right.
We don't want that.
The next thing on the agenda is the E911 address changes.
Ah, yes.
And there's been a fair amount of email communication, but I will confess that I do not actually understand all of the implications to either property owner there or the town. So perhaps, Lisa, you could summarize this for us briefly.
All right, I'll start with where, of course, now rescue has a call. Give me a second, when it lights up, I can shut it up. I can't make it stop yet. So basically what happened is, a while ago, I heard from some of the people on the fire department, they had all sorts of questions about 911. And this was actually about a year ago, but as we got so busy with the townwide property revaluation, kind of put it aside and didn't deal with it until I had time. And then I started going through it, and it kind of like took on a life of its own. It started out with just, hey, this doesn't seem right, that doesn't sound right. And, so I was able to go through, and I don't know if you know the name Tyler Hermanson, but he is with 911 at the state level. And I got him on the phone, and he and I actually had several marathon phone calls of 5 hours or more. Just
goodness.
going through the town. I mean, this was amazing. It's like, hey, this one looks like a mobile home, but it's a house. Hey, this one says it's the number 642, but really it's 648. 642 is the one above. I mean, it came to all of that. To one that was on addressed on Bonnievale Road, but it's really on Akeley, and that's a problem because emergency services can't find it. And it started out with things that the fire department, some of the people in the Bevan Quinn actually in the fire department had noticed. I piggybacked on things that the Lister's office had noted that were issues that 911 just had wrong, and then he went on with his whole list that he's been compiling of things that the 911 thought were problems.
And may I just say...
In Guilford.
We're talking Guilford.
May I interject a comment here? That this E911 address is a state mandated
Right.
Yes.
regulation or
It's a
law.
state- it is.
And so you were what you were doing in all of these consultations was bringing our town up to to meet the requirements as stated by the state.
Right, making
Okay.
corrections to things that were in error. I mean, some things were just plain wrong, and other things, you know, it was just a matter of tweaking. But then, you know, some of the things that he came up with were, you know, specifically the things on Bullock. He's like, this has been bothering me, you know, all along. He's like, these numbers are just so wrong. They're totally out of whack because it's all done by measurement. And it's how many miles up.
From the intersection.
Most of the towns in the state of Vermont, evens are on the right, odds are on the left. You've got towns like Brattleboro, which have it backwards. But, you know, it's
And you're facing which direction?
it's basically like going,
From the
out.
point of measurement.
From the point of
which is
measurement going,
From the,
exactly.
from the nearest big intersection.
It's mostly going like from in and going out kind of thing. But as you know, as you said, from depending upon which direction and from a major point to a smaller point. Anyway, but it's all done by how many feet you are, and again by fractions of a mile. And the whole idea with E911 and when it came to be is that it's for emergency services. So when we're out there in our ambulance and it's dark and we can't see anybody's posted numbers because 3/4 of the people don't post them anyway. My own other issue. Sorry, I've been in emergency services too long.
Wearing your other hat.
Wearing my other hat, and that's another thing I want to get, like, I would love to have a mandate on that, but anyway. But just trying to find these places when, you know, it's 3 a.m, you've just gotten, you know, jumped out of wherever you're doing, and you're trying to find a place, and you know you should be able to find it by distance. So if you're starting with your odometer at such and such, you know, at the beginning of the road, you should be able to find number 500 half a mile up, kind of thing.
Okay. Thank
So
Now,
now, looking at that, it doesn't fit right when you get up that road. And
up Bullock Hill.
up Bullock, yes. So, you know, first there's the whole thing, you know, Bullock Road as opposed to Bullock Drive, and where actually they do end and where the sign used to be, and then it actually moved to the right place and all this other stuff. But then, so we had this whole discussion about the history of all of that. But then it came down to where the road actually goes, because Bullock and Cemetery Hill really are two different sides of the same road. It is a class 4 road that comes from both directions, and there actually are gates at both ends, and it is there's a non-maintained portion in the middle.
So,
and
and that's the class 4 section that
That's-
connects the
it's-
two.
Yes, and it's a non-maintained
Official
class
roads,
floor
okay.
that it connects the two, exactly, roads. And then, so the town does own all of that. It's actually, even Bullock Drive is a town-owned, non-maintained class 4 because it's maintained privately. So, anyway, so with the measurement and everything like that, really, if you look at the way the road is, all you guys are on the right, which means you should all have even numbers, and you should all be addressed right from down on Weatherhead Hollow Road, and as the measurements come up. The last 5 houses, yes, 5.
Oh, they changed.
No, we're not. The other one is in, so when it sells, it gets a new address. Okay, so but then the last 4 are really off. So those he just felt he's like, these just are wrong.
They're
and they
not,
have
so
to
what
be-
you're saying is they're not measured accurately from the intersection of Weatherhead Hollow Road.
Mhm.
And so,
And
And
so, with that being said, those 4 needed new addresses.
we're advised, but in writing, that they needed to have they needed to have their address numbers reassigned.
Because it's
Exactly.
state law.
Because it's the law, to reflect the accurate 911 address.
And the measurements and all that.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And so he was able to tell. I mean, I can do it, but his software is so much more advanced than the software that because they actually provide us with software to go and make these modifications and everything like that. We used to go out and do it all by a wheel and everything like that. But they provide us with software to change it. But his software that he's got is much more powerful than mine. So he was actually just he went and did the measuring and said, this should be this, this should be this, this should be this. So he told me what the addresses should be, and we just kind of went from there. And as you've seen, some of the numbers are very different than what they had been.
And so I am understanding that we have request to the town to not change the numbers? Is that what, is that why, because you were advised by the listers that this is the correct number?
Well, so ours, when we bought our house, we had assumed what I've now known as a class 4 non-maintained road that we maintain as our driveway was our driveway.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, we were given the number 577, which is correct if that were our driveway, because that's where it comes off of what we thought was Bullock Drive. But we have learned that it is actually a class 4 non-maintained road. We maintain it and use it as our driveway, and that our driveway would technically start at where a gate goes into a complete non-maintained road. It's non-drivable.
Non-maintained.
Really non-maintained. So as it is, ours is correct, except for the fact the town owns that portion of what we had thought was our driveway. So I had talked to Lisa about this of, would it be possible for us to see about taking over that portion that we maintain, which is a class 4 non-maintained road, as part of our driveway, to acquire that so we don't have to change our address, because otherwise our address is correct where it leaves Bullock Drive.
So,
Is that all correct?
Yeah.
so
Okay.
your address, the 577,
And 575. which
okay,
is true.
is correct
Because
according to the
Timber
fact
Hall
of
is
how
on
far it is from the intersection where they had Hollow Road.
Correct, and that's where our shared driveway leaves Bullock.
So it does meet the state standard then.
But we'd have to.
As a private driveway.
As a private
As a
drive.
private driveway, but not as a,
But
as
not
a
as a-
non-maintained road.
So my interest was just, what would if there's an ability to put that up for acquisition, what that acquisition process would be, if that's even a discussion to enter into.
So what she's asking is, can she or she and the other neighbor, to be discussed on their own, acquire from the town that portion of road so that they don't have to change their address?
And so, sorry, so you would acquire, I don't know, say a quarter of a mile?
Probably almost a half mile.
Yeah.
A half mile of road, and it would be a
Or
half
actually, it's
mile.
probably a quarter mile where our driveway officially is.
Yeah,
it's a quarter mile.
I mean, I didn't go measure the actual distance, but they would
So
like to.
approximately half mile. And then beyond that, there is a little more that connects to Cemetery Hill.
Yes.
It's more of a walking, I mean,
It's used as a trail right now, which is why it's got the gates. So it's been, there's always been the possibility of the thought it would take some grading because there's some steepness to it and everything like that, but it could potentially be regraded and actually another access into Guilford Center.
As it once was.
As there once was. Yes.
Who
it used to be.
maintains the gates?
And that's the topic. The gates don't really get maintained so much.
Who
They
put 'em
belong
up?
to the town.
The town
The
did?
town did.
we put them back up when they fall over, but they're just like metal gates.
So, excuse me for a minute, Lisa, do you have to leave now?
No, I'm just going to text my daughter that I am.
Good.
No, I just wanted to make sure you were still okay. Okay.
So,
Can someone describe this to me on this map that I
Can I
had?
look, can I?
Yeah, because that would be really helpful, so I know whose
like
numbers are where and what is changing from what people are. I think you're 577. You said here.
We're
Let me get a highlighter.
A highlighter would be.
And then-
Okay, so
where's where they had Hollow Road?
it's way down here.
Okay.
So this is Bullock Drive right
Yeah.
here.
A whole bunch over
We're
there.
gonna go pink.
And this, I'm just gonna lay out Bullock
Okay,
Drive.
so we've got.
Oh, thank you, okay. Here's Weatherhead Hollow. Okay, here is Bullock Road to about there, which the town maintains.
And so that's where Maggie is?
That's where 218 is, yes, where Maggie's house is. Starting at Maggie's house, it becomes Bullock Drive, which we as the rest of the residents collectively pay to maintain.
Because it's a non-town, non-maintained road.
Well, it's a class 4 non-maintained road, so as private residents, we have
Okay.
to pay to plow it and maintain it. So when we bought our house, we incorrectly, but thought our driveway started right here, which is 577, which according to 911 numbering is correct. And we have always had this as our driveway. When we got a letter from the town, we were told that our driveway actually starts here and it should be 860. So that was our question. In order to not have to change our address because we have so many businesses and things connected to this address,
would it be possible to acquire this part of the road since we maintain it anyway?
Or declassify it, essentially.
Or abandon,
would-
abandon the road,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, those are, what I would see
I
with
think
the
those
other
are the
option.
choices, yeah.
Who owns this piece? And,
We-
I mean, how many
so-
people own
right.
land up
So
here? How many
we,
parcels?
as
are currently-
577, own kind of like this on either side of the road, and then it goes around like this. So either side of the road is owned by 577. 575 owns like this, and then John, you own,
688.
and you're like, how, I don't know what you're,
Well, it's about like that,
okay,
9 acres, and then Susie
And then
West.
Susie
is
West
up
is
there.
over there.
is
That's
owns
the floor.
And then
Yeah.
down, and then you've got down here is Victor Johnson.
Victor Johnson.
And over here is the help me out.
Walkers.
Walkers, thank you.
So my question is, do you take care of your road or driveway, whatever this might be here now?
Yes.
So it wouldn't affect any services if we were to stop or do whatever to the town road here? We're not gonna take away services that you've been receiving, for example, like
We don't
snow
receive
plowing.
We
anything,
don't
no.
receive
I just wanna make sure, okay.
We do it all.
That nobody does, okay.
Yeah.
And other than the 4 individual addresses we're talking about, this doesn't impact any other piece of property that
These
we
are
know.
all addressed correctly, aren't they?
This one is
Say
actually
the
needs
numbers,
to.
please, please.
Okay, so
558.
558, and I don't remember exactly, I believe has to go down to 500 or something like that, because that one is, that was the 5th one, that when it sells, it's not as far off as a lot of the other ones,
So,
so.
I guess what
You
I'm
know that I
asking,
saw that
Lisa, is if the town was to do something on this and change our status of ownership of this Class 4 road, non-maintained road, would it potentially impact any other properties, address-wise, up there, other than the ones you've talked about?
No, not address-wise.
Okay.
It would not. It would really just affect these two, because these two really should kind of need to change anyway, because that this is all starting with kind of back here as their address, and this one needs to change regardless,
And
because
are there
when it gets
individuals
sold.
who own those properties who are,
John owns
John,
this
so
one.
how does he feel about the changing of the address?
Well, I'm not crazy about it.
It's always going to be a pain.
Yeah, it certainly is.
They
I
want you
mean,
to change from 688 to 588, John? Okay,
Yeah.
and then I still don't understand how you would have 577 and 575 higher up than
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
wrong.
Right, so if our driveway actually started there, 577 and 575 are
Then
correct.
how
Yeah.
from the, like a mile marker.
Then how
If
could
that were your
588 and 590 or 688 and 691 be correct if they're before you? I mean,
They'd then be after us because they'd be Bullock Drive continues up that way.
right, because I think that when these got numbered, and I wasn't doing it back then, I think that it was thought, because back then, I'm going to steal this for everyone, they're actually, the sign for Bullock Drive was here at the driveway, basically, that John and Susie share. This Bullock Drive sign was there, and I think it was misunderstood that was Bullock Drive here, and that this was a driveway. And so
That's
this is
what we
why they
understand.
would
That's
have
what
a
your deed
higher number
says?
than this.
I can't figure out the deed because it's a pole in the ground to the big maple
So
tree.
it's
And, yeah.
so it was just basically done with misinformation back when it was numbered, and it's screwy, because I mean you go out there and try to find an address that makes zero sense.
so if the town is to abandon a specific portion of Bullock Drive, and there would no longer be the opportunity to connect to Cemetery Hill,
Ever.
and it would reduce the mileage for which we receive some kind of funding from the state by how much approximately?
0.33 is what the email said.
Is that-
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So not a whole lot, I mean, I think,
Not a ton
yeah. And Danny said it would be an immaterial difference
financially.
financially to the town.
So, are you done? Because I have a question.
Kind of, I mean, I'm just trying to
No, no,
formulate the
You're
question. I'm
summarizing
trying to
it.
summarize and formulate the question before the board.
Right, well, I mean, just an element that I
think
was
you could get off
thinking
your-
of
Yeah, I was just want to make sure. he can see.
was that if on the other side, Cemetery Road, if somebody bought land on Cemetery Road and wanted to improve the road
to the extent that, you know, the town would take it over. And it would be an advantage to be able to connect on the other side. Let's say 10 years from now, something like that, when the profile of the town might look different. Then the fact that the town had sort of abandoned its sort of,
It's
well, I don't
right-
even know what you would
rights.
call it.
It's rights.
Its right to do any, to sort of have a say over what goes on there. I don't know whether that's part of our consideration or
It
not.
is.
sure
It
it
is
is.
totally.
Absolutely.
It is.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons we're having. That is the reason we're having this
Oh, that
discussion.
is-
Should the town abandon its rights or not? Gabby, did you?
Oh no, I had a question about whether, you know, because I know the Conservation Commission undertook a big undertaking when the laws changed, I want to say about 3 years ago, that had to do with ancient roads and trails. And they had a very comprehensive understanding of the implications about what would or would not happen at that point in time if they didn't call something an ancient trail or whatnot. So has
Right.
anyone talked to the people who were involved in that to find out the implications long term of either abandoning or doing something?
No, I
To
totally
this
forgot.
road.
I think that's a
If the
great.
town
That's a
abandons
very good idea.
it, does it become Thayer's property or who's the ownership?
So it would, the process would be similar to what has happened with the former Anthony lot in Broadbrook Community Center. So the first we would have, and I would check with VLCT to confirm this, but based on my most recent discussion with them, so we would have to draft an agreement between the various parties stating what the conditions of that agreement were. Then it would have to be posted for a minimum, publicly posted for a minimum of 30 days. And if there was no petition filed stating that it must go to a town vote, then that could proceed forward. And that would have to be the town selling that portion, first declassifying it as a road to no longer being a road, and then
And
selling
then
it
it
to the
becomes
relevant.
private property?
Selling it as private property is a process that would have to happen.
Thank you. So I have another
Oh,
question.
yeah, me too.
Me too.
You do yours first.
If all you did was put a sign up on your whatever wherever at the big on Bullock Hill that says this is number 860. Is there any other thing that you would need to change? I mean, the purpose is so that they can find your house by location, and they're going to do it by miles, which is going to be 860.
It was my understanding we have to change our address with every legal document too, that it's an official address change across the board.
It is an official address change, and I almost wish the camera was on for a second, because I don't know if you could, because it's a small enough town, I don't know if you could work something out with the post office or not to have like both addresses. Do you know what I mean? Because we would have to send to,
I mean, you don't go via the post box at the bottom of Weatherhead Hollow Road to figure out how you're going to get there. You travel up the
Right,
road.
yeah, but
8.86 miles, right, to their house.
right. So, so I just don't know if they could work something out with the post office to understand that the mailbox, that says 571, I don't even remember the number anymore. Can and 860 at the same time could handle both kind of thing.
But isn't it almost the opposite, that just keeps the address as it is?
It-
And the only one who's
yeah.
impacted is E911, and what Sheila's saying is just put a sign at the bottom saying
860.
860 that way.
So I'm just going to say that the email from the guy in the state, I'm assuming he knows what he's talking about,
Yeah.
says the town has two choices: change the address.
Yes, that's what
Yeah.
the email said.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
I
it
feel
is
like
true.
we might be spinning our wheels here a
Yep,
little
you're
bit.
probably right.
When we change the address, it goes to the phone company, it goes to the post office.
Gotcha.
It's, and
My-
the town does the phone company and the
Right.
post office, and then the homeowner's got to do all the other ones.
So just a quick follow-up on the address being accurate. If we made the address changes, then everything would be accurate along that road.
Again, with the exception, I believe it's Myers, that's that fifth one.
Okay.
Is it Imicus?
No,
Oh, Imicus, okay.
It's Amicus.
It's Imicus. And
So
as I
if-
said, is that one was close enough to be able to be, to be found, and then it's on the list already. Next time it gets sold,
Okay.
there's like a memo on there when it gets
Just-
sold.
you're gonna
If it
change
gets sold,
it.
then it has to change then.
So if the town was to work out, let's say this, something did work out where we made this transition from its current state to another state, whatever that might be, would the E911 then be accurate?
Yes.
Okay. For all the addresses except that one, the one that we want
The
to
one we're
change to
kind of
500.
holding on for a little bit, yeah, yep.
I've got a question. On our address is 688, you see it drop it to 588.
Right.
I still don't know what 588 represents. What, that's a certain distance from Weatherhead Hall?
Yes,
Yes,
it is.
point
What?
588.
Point 588, is that right? So point,
Yeah, that's what it should be,
almost
yeah.
0.6 of a mile.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's accurate, actually, yeah.
But how would that be accurate?
If they're
If
8-6,
there's,
so
okay,
Yes.
you think it would, I mean,
yeah,
you can see it and to understand. But that doesn't mean anything to me in the sense, that's why I'm asking
Well, it's in the
Lisa.
pink right here.
it's pink here too.
Yeah. Because this road would just then extend up. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
Bullock Drive would extend up, and the driveway would start
Yeah.
there.
So. I'm
Right, the
not-
driveway would
right-
start at 577,
It'll
right?
His
start
address
right.
is
So
accurate.
the driveway will start for 577 right
driveway
here,
started
and
here.
then that road would just continue. Am I understanding that correctly? So Bullock Drive would just be like up here.
Yes.
Right, which is
Correct.
what we thought it all
Which is what
happened.
people, and that's how it got numbered, as if that was the case. But yes, and so Bullock Drive would go that way.
So these
Bullock
numbers
Drive
should be
goes
accurate.
both ways,
further
right?
away and
Bullock
it's
Drive
just-
goes to our
That's
house
why I'm asking,
too.
but I think it's because.
But because it really, it doesn't.
This is Bullock Drive and this is,
There's two Bullock-
No, it's really Bullock Drive goes this way. It was
That's-
confused, and there was a
think
sign
that's
there
what-
saying
So
this
what's
and
this?
implying this was Bullock Drive. This is really just a driveway off of Bullock Drive. This is where Bullock Drive
so
really
you're saying
goes.
that we really don't live on Bullock Drive?
You do, and you're addressed off of here. This is Bullock Drive, so this is a driveway. So you do live off of Bullock Drive, which is the pink.
You don't live on Bullock Drive, you
You live-
live
Your
off
your
Bullock
driveway is
Drive.
not off. This road is not off of Bullock Drive.
I mean, if
Technically.
we wanted to go and do a whole nother thing, you could always just go name this something else too.
But is
which
my-
just gets really, really muddy.
But is my interpretation of what these little arrows are in the email are saying Bullock Drive private arrow here, this then becomes Bullock Drive?
Right.
Does that make sense? So it would do what you always thought it did.
Yeah.
Is that an accurate
Exactly.
way of
Yes.
saying it?
That is exactly.
Exactly.
It would do what you always thought it did. It would be the way you thought it was, and the way that whoever numbered it thought it was.
So my question.
Thus, these would be on the left, and those would be on the right.
But overall, this is a state law. The state is requiring this.
Yes.
So what?
Yeah,
It's very,
What's the
and it's in
point?
a very valuable way of emergency vehicles finding where you are.
I do understand Thayer's issue with having a business at home and trying to figure out how to manage all of that, or businesses, multiple businesses.
Yes, in 50 years, our address has changed probably 5 times. People think I've moved a lot. But really, my address just changed, but fortunately, poetry is not big business. But my question was that if the town were to convey that piece of driveway, let's say, to Thayer and Ahmet, would that be a financial transaction?
Yes.
And if so, how would we determine what it was worth?
My guess is we would determine the area, the distance times the width, determine the area, and go with our standard land tables is what I would recommend.
She's the lister.
So maybe maybe because I would like more information before deciding
Yeah.
this. I think
Yeah,
it would
I
be helpful
agree.
to find out about the people who did the ancient roads and what we do and don't lose if we were to abandon that, and then to look at the process through VCLT.
I know I get the L and the C of it.
And figure out what's the process and go about
What
it
it
that
would
way.
look like.
No,
What are
I-
we losing and what's the process?
No, I know, I've talked with Danny about it, because he isn't able to come to meetings, and I don't know if you've talked to Danny about it
I mean,
at
he
all.
briefly said it's not a big deal for the town. but,
Right,
um,
but I will say, you know, he's kind of against it just because it seems short-sighted, as in the possibility of connecting, which may or may not ever happen, but that is
But
eliminated
that's the
altogether.
substantive implication of of it is
Right.
that would never be able to happen.
That would never be able to happen, because I know it was, again, as Brenda, I believe, said, way back when it was used as a way through, and it would take some substantial work to make it a way through again, and so nobody's denying that, and it may or may not ever happen, but that eliminates the possibility of that ever being another way to get into Guilford Center.
So I like your, I mean, we definitely need more information, Gabby. I like your suggestion.
That makes sense.
I don't think, we're not gonna make a decision tonight,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, I know.
I would recommend that you put a sign 860 up there with a 5 something underneath it, 577, just in case. And have Kim do the same thing.
I don't think their house isn't even smart, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, just in case something happens. But and I have to say that I found, what's his name, Thayer, no,
Tyler?
Tyler Herman says, I mean, he prefaces his email by saying, please be wary of the area. Like, what does that mean? And he said it twice.
Well, he doesn't mean the geographic area.
I'm just trying to,
Yeah, I know
He
what
means the numbering.
Well, he thinks
The issue?
that it's a slippery slope. You know,
it could be. So I think maybe we've concluded that
I
we
think
should
we have.
discuss this at the, you know, you will do some other investigation. I mean, we will discuss it at the next meeting,
Okay, yeah, I'm fine with that.
okay?
Mainly my purpose was seeing, is this even a possibility before we go and just say, okay, fine, we'll change our address.
I think it's a possibility, but I think we don't have enough information to
That's
say
fine.
yes or no.
That's fine.
So
Thank you.
I've, just to summarize, I put down for action point that I'll investigate with the Conservation Commission and their work on ancient roads. I'll also confer with VLCT and get their opinion, and then speak with Danny one further time just to get his opinion on the situation.
Right.
And then if necessary, be in contact with those who live on Bullock Road.
Drive it.
Okay.
Drive, yes.
I'm sorry.
Could you put that
Bullock
in, could you
Drive.
put all that into a short note, what your findings are, so that it's
Absolutely.
all
Well,
in
no,
one-
'cause
all in one place?
it will be on the agenda for,
And then I don't know how you summarize it, maybe it's covered in there, but Miranda's point that if we were to make a change to this road, that, you know, there would never be an opportunity for that
Definitely.
road to continue
Yep.
through. So
Definitely.
that's the part you're gonna ask VLCT about?
That's
Or-
correct.
Okay, thank you.
One last thing, because I'm assuming we're about to be excused. Do you need any of us back next time around for input?
I think whatever Peter discovers will determine that, we'll let you know, but I think it probably not.
Okay.
I mean, unless there's new information.
John?
What, how much warning are we gonna have? Like, how will we know, like you're gonna say, is it gonna be in a month it changes? Are you gonna notify the post office by a certain date, or?
I would say, I mean, after
It looks
they.
like mine's gonna stay, mine's not gonna change, mine is gonna change, it looks like. So,
Yours, yeah, it looks like yours is gonna
So-
change regardless, and then
Right.
I think what I'll do is we'll just hold off on all of them and just until, and we'll do them kind of all as a batch, all 4 of them, or
Okay.
after, if we decide that
And
only
once
2
you
of them are
initiate
gonna
the
happen.
change, how long does it take?
It's, once the select board makes their decision, I'll give you a call and then I'll have,
Okay.
basically we'll send the stuff to the post office and then give you, and then take another 2 weeks and then you
Okay.
can, to get them, everything switched over and then you would wanna start switching stuff.
Okay,
So 2 weeks after I'll give you a phone call, followed with a letter,
okay,
and then start changing stuff within 2 weeks.
all right.
I mean, just as input, the select board, when they make their decision, can also state in that decision that it will become effective at or after a certain point as well. So if between discussions between residents and whatever the final decision is, you know, John, you can request that, you know, or ask the select board to say, you know, after 30 days that this will become effective, just to give you the time you may need to make other changes. So that's something that you could request.
And you will want us to do the notifying of the post office a couple weeks before you do yours anyway, so that then when you get things coming to the new address, they can actually find it.
Sure.
So that needs a little lead time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
It's
everybody. Sorry for
Well,
Thank you.
Thank
not being
you.
able to
Yeah,
come.
thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Sorry, it's complicated.
Oh, I know.
The next thing on the agenda is final municipal roads grants program.
General permit.
Municipal
Roads
roads
general.
general permits.
So it finally came out a little late. I don't know if anyone else went on the website to read it because it was riveting. Richard's like, no. But just a refresher. So this all has to do with Act 64, which is the Clean Water Act.
Oh, right.
Okay. We talked about this in the past. It's been really well advertised by A&R. It really has to do with the best practices relating to stormwater management. What it requires is that every town has to inventory all of its hydrologically connected roads, which means those that drain into surface waters. We're going to have to create an implementation plan and indicate a schedule for each of the, so you're going to go and say, oh, this road needs help, here's what needs to be done, here's our plan for doing it, here's the date by which we're expected to do that. That consists of both an implementation table and a road erosion inventory. This has to be done by 2020. This December 31, 2020, okay? Your implementation plan needs to be implemented by December 31st, 2036. Okay, so they're giving you 16 years. All municipalities must apply for and file an NOI by July 31, 2018.
An NOI.
Notice of intent.
Okay.
Okay, that's supposed to be on their website. It's not there yet. They're still working on it. But just keep
So the notice of intent is for the purposes they're keeping track of that you're going to be doing, but, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right. And I assume it's going to be pretty a form, but they just haven't gotten it yet. There'll be an annual operating fee of $2,000. Right, it's a general permit, and then the initial administrative processing and application fee is $640. So this year we'll have to pay $2640.
And is
And then
this
2,000
the
thereafter.
2,500 that we estimated in the budget?
That's correct.
Okay, fine.
Correct. There's also, if you go
What are
on-
we paying for, excuse me, but what are we paying for? Just the administrative, what it takes to
What
add this?
yes, what
setting up the
DEC is
program.
saying is that they are now going to have to hire someone to look at all these road inventories and check that it's implemented. So it'll be new staff.
Mhm.
That's their reasoning.
And so the new staff will be just like in the office, or part of this will be, oh, we don't know.
I don't have any of the details. I mean,
Okay.
based on what I've heard,
Okay.
I mean, it's all still very new and being in
Okay.
process. There's also, if anyone wants to look, a list of grants for municipalities that are online on the DEC website. If you just look up Municipal Roads General Permit. Some of which we've already taken advantage of, like the Grants and Aid program. We did it in July of last year already. So I expect, this is just a heads up, I expect there will be more grants coming down the pike. We have a lot of hydrologically connected roadways. Okay?
The next series of grants available will be opening in March.
So to summarize, July 31st of 2018, we have to file our NOI. Then we need to have annual reports due on April 1st of 2019 and 2020. December 30th, 2020, they call it the Road Stormwater Management Plan, which is our table plus our road erosion inventory, needs to be submitted. Thereafter, every April 1st, we have an annual report due. And then all of our implementation, and this is just implementing all the best management practices, so we're up to standards, needs to be completed by December 31st, 2036.
So who in our town is going to be responsible for this?
Us. That's why I'm sort of like trying to drive it home. It's going to be time consuming and
Yeah.
expensive.
Very
Okay?
expensive.
And so here, WRC, of course, is ahead of the game. What's with all that rock in the ditch? A little pamphlet on our new, on Act 64 and the Municipal Roads General Permit. So I could pass this around because I actually only have one copy, but it talks about,
They provided 50 copies for us to hand
Oh.
out at
Town
town
meeting.
I mean,
day.
they're awesome. So
They're sitting on my
it,
desk.
it gives just a little background about the Clean Water Act. It's supposed to be an all-in, fix our water situation. What does that mean? So why is it called What's with all that rock in the ditch? Because there's going to be more stone line ditching. And so when people say, why am I seeing all this stone line ditches? The roads look fine. That's why. So I can pass that around, but that's sort of the the
So
10
maybe,
minute
Peter,
summary.
you could
Thank you,
scan this
Gabby.
and send it to us, because we're gonna have to have a folder that.
We already have a PDF copy of it I shared with you all earlier last week.
That?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and certainly right now WRC is sort of acting as the go-between and sort of as the liaison between the towns and the states in starting to implement all of this.
If we
Okay,
need
so
additional
this-
copies, we can print them out.
Yep, this past summer, WRC did a road, they went and did the boots on the ground road inventorying for 6 towns. They're still it involves a lot of staff time.
Yeah.
And they're still writing up the reports. So there'll be another group going this summer. And there's grant money available.
And there's an
for that.
inspection, and then there's an inspection every year, right? Isn't that what you said?
We have to do a report every year
Oh, yeah.
about sort of where we are, because
Yeah.
they're checking on us to make sure we are
We're doing it.
doing it.
Wasn't the grant that we received, it was part of this overall program, but some of the boots on the ground figuring out what they were gonna focus on, they looked at multiple sites,
for our
right? Or was
town.
it just stage?
Not yet for our town.
It was the stage roads?
They did some replacements and relating to
Well, stonework. I mean, I thought it was connected to this, but it isn't.
so the grants and
That
aid
was
was.
separate.
It was
Okay,
the stone ditching.
But
And then some
Grants and
culvert
aid.
replacement
Yeah.
too.
I see.
Okay, but they did not come. The grants and aid we got this summer was not for them to do a full-on inventory.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a
Okay, yeah,
full-on
yeah.
inventory, but it was a inventory of some of the areas that we have. I'm
Well-
curious, if you look at the town of Guilford, how much is impacted
We have
by
a
this?
lot. I mean,
And does the river
I can tell you.
corridor change that?
no.
that does
Okay.
not.
It's a different
'Cause
definition.
I'm sure we're gonna have some questions on
But
that.
I had that with
two
our
unrelated things.
Yeah,
They
no,
can-
I agree. I just didn't know if the river corridor,
So the
know.
grants and aid work has so far only been on Carpenter Hill Road,
right.
and there will be some on Bonneville later this spring.
And there was none done
Oh,
on Stage
right.
Road 2 years ago? No?
The ditching, that was, I believe, Better Back Road.
Gotcha.
But I can't commit to that. But Guilford has 45 to 50 hydraulically connected road miles.
45 to 50, okay, thank you.
And we are up
So-
there. I'm looking at all the towns and we,
So if
We
you
are so-
figure, we have 78.8 miles of roads.
So we should be like high on the list of getting support.
I think it means we're gonna have, I just want to put it out there, we're gonna have a lot of road miles to go.
Right.
Because it is
Exactly.
literally looking at getting
Every
ditches.
road, right?
So,
Could I just ask a question for clarification since Ian Keel, BCTV came around? How many roads are affected in Guilford?
I'll tell you the number of, there is 45 to 50 miles
Oh.
of hydraulically connected road.
40 to 50?
And we have a
45
total
to
of
50.
78.8.
78.
So almost
Right.
more than
Because it's anything that
And
goes,
13 miles is paved,
Yep.
are paved.
But
And
those
the
paved
rest-
ones are also, some of the
They'd be
paved ones are
impacted.
hydrologically connected.
right, because think about
Oh,
like,
right, okay.
Weatherhead Hollow goes right into the pond.
Oh,
So
yes.
it's
Or
anything.
Center Road.
So this
Do we know how
this
much,
is Ian
uh,
Keel again. I just want to get it clear for viewers at home. Roughly 2/3 of your roads
Yes.
will
Correct.
fall under this new
Yes.
Act
state
64.
oversight.
Yes.
Or-
Yes.
Okay.
And
thank
do we
you.
know how much money is behind this available to municipalities?
They have not made that clear yet.
And what kind of skill set will be required? Is this going to be like, theoretically citizen teams?
No, I
It's
don't, it needs to be
road
someone who has an
crews.
understanding about the roads and how water runs. So to me, that's somebody from Wyndham Regional Commission in conjunction with the road crews.
That's correct. That's exactly.
Not just people
So
who lived
you
on
can't-
the road
It's not
and know where the
socialism.
mud is.
Unfortunate. I mean, I think, I don't think it's
I'm
a
not
bad idea.
suggesting it's a
but-
great idea, I'm just saying,
Well, we know we need to do the road inventory.
yes.
Thank you, Gabby.
This is a very informative, this sums it up nicely.
Gabby, you have, it looks like excellent notes there, and I'm wondering if you could copy them for Peter so that he could create a project folder for this, because I think we need to at least start there.
With a
Um,
calendar.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
and-
and
yeah.
the current draft, and they're still working on a lot of forms, but the current draft is now up there. So if you have nothing else to do, it's about 12 pages.
Thank you.
And just so you guys know, WRC, I've already spoken with John, and they are thinking that Guilford will likely be one of the 6 towns that they work with this year.
And And if you want any information about the Clean Water Act,
Thank you.
here's a nice little.
Is this extra or is this?
You can have that one. I mean, or we can make copies, whatever. I just happen to have them from my other work.
Yes, I read this, I just like having it.
Oh, you can have it.
So I believe that I don't know, I've just gotten a little bit of information from Peter this evening on this, but we have an Act 64 Fund 014, which Peter just put into our town funds and balances tonight.
Good.
And we have we have a good looking total of $118,000 in that fund that I think Katie put in at the end of 2016.
Because she knew this was coming.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
It's a start.
so now, so we're not in a bad position there. But Gabby, I really appreciate this, bringing, sharing all of this and organizing it.
Is the expectation though that the state will pay for the most of this?
I wouldn't count on that at all.
Nope.
They've been, like last year, they had, I know Wyndham Regional Commission had more applicants for that grant and aid program than they had expected. And I know V-Trans sort of moved money around because they felt they needed to support the towns and give them more money. But I wouldn't necessarily expect that going forward.
That's why the state is giving us until 2036 to get this implemented, is because they anticipate that it will be costly to towns.
Right, it's going to change the highway budget.
That's correct.
Significantly.
And we'll know more, I didn't mean
Go
to,
ahead.
but once
No,
we
no.
have the road inventory, we'll know exactly
Right.
how much more that will actually be impacting.
And so do you suppose like the county will have a circuit rider hydrologist whose job it would be to do these inventories with a set of expert guidelines?
Like as a check, like enforcement?
Well, no, I mean
No.
just
To
to
do the
assist,
inventory, you're saying.
assist with the inventory and the implementation plans.
No. That's not been planned for, put it that way.
So we would have to hire someone to do the inventory.
Well, which is why if we can work with WRC and
Right.
get it done.
Yeah,
That would be very helpful.
yeah. Do your
use that.
best.
And that's the great thing about WRC is they have the expertise and they're there to help the towns.
Yes.
And they do
And
have staffing to be able to do this.
Assuming they get the same, they get the grant money.
Great.
Yeah.
No, and I think if we could be part of that, Dan has the history of, he knows what roads he works on.
Oh, yeah.
A
And
lot more than other roads. And
It's
I
all
think
the
that
road
codifying
combination.
a lot of what's in his head.
Right.
the
but
road
that's-
crews know it, which is why what they do is they go around and they drive with the road crew
Right.
and they get out and once it's,
Right.
and then dig around and stuff.
Right.
The road crew, and that's why they're, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but like as part of the Green River Watershed Alliance, for example, they have the 3 road commissioners from the 3 towns involved who are going to talk about road erosion. I mean, WRC recognizes that the road commissioners are their best resource.
Good.
Thank you.
I'd love to be at that meeting where all the road commissioners talk about their roads.
The Town Officer Education Conference, basically, it's just 2 days. I looked again on the agenda. There's
Two
no
different
agenda.
days.
2 different days.
Is that April 3rd and
It's the April 3rd and April 10th, one in Lake Maury and one in Montpelier. And there's still no agenda, but so I
That's
think
Oh, good, because I couldn't find the
No.
agenda.
That's because they haven't posted it
they'll
yet.
post it on the
So-
15th. So I think, so we have that opportunity as well as the Spring Select Board Institute that's put on by VLCT. And what I don't know is if there's an overlap in topics.
In general, no. They try to not do that.
So we need to look at the agendas and maybe a portion, decide who's gonna go to what if we can.
If we get the early bird registration at this time, they're both the same amount.
$65 a person.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah. So we
And
want to,
that's over when?
The TOEC is either April 3rd or April 10th.
Yeah, so we
depending
have a
on-
little time.
the early
The-
registration is April 15th to the end of, February 15th
To-
until the end of February, something like that.
Right.
There's
March
a couple
15th.
weeks.
So we'll have an agenda to look at.
February
and we'll have
15th.
the other
Clearly.
agenda
Yeah.
to look at.
Yes, they are supposed to post the agenda at the end of this week.
All right?
Did you say April 3rd or April 10th?
That's
April
correct.
3rd
Two
or
different
the
dates.
10th.
Two different dates.
In 2 different places?
They're both Tuesdays, FYI.
Thank you.
And then we have this Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation
That's correct.
request for a letter of support. And
So.
you're on about that because I
Yep.
have no idea what it is.
So as I shared with all of you over the weekend, the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation is currently working with the Vermont River Conservancy to take steps to purchase a development easement on a property over in Green River. It was a property that during Irene, the Green River shifted its route and made this property into an island. And I think many of us heard about the house that was stuck there and that was destroyed from that. And so over the past 6+ months, the Vermont River Conservancy and DEC have been working with the landowners to come to some form of conclusion. And the one that has been agreed upon between the parties, and this was just publicly announced a couple weeks ago, is for them to put together a variety of funds, both public and private, to purchase this property. And so actually at the Green River Watershed Alliance meeting, 2 weeks ago?
I think it was a couple weeks, yeah.
Yeah. The executive director of the Vermont River Conservancy is part of that, our group, and he was talking about this. And so they have between now and the beginning of July to finish raising all the funds to purchase this easement. And one of the things they're trying to do is the more support they can show for the purchasing of this easement, the easier it will be for them to get funds. And one of the really big ways that will help them is to get a letter of support from the town. And I, based off of the recommendations from the Department of Environmental Conservation, I drafted a letter of support with a few minor alterations to it to make it relevant to our town. And so basically, you as a board need to decide whether or not you would like to send a letter of support for the work that they are doing. If you wish,
You sent us the letter, right?
Oh yeah, I shared a copy of the letter
Yeah.
with you from the DEC river scientist.
And the draft, you sent us the draft. I have a question, I mean, it's just a clarification. So this is about purchasing an easement, not the land itself? It says, there are sometimes questions towns have about the implications of the state purchasing an easement. And I didn't know what that meant.
Yes, so it's as I understand it, and I could contact her if you want me to make.
No, I
Make-
just,
clarify.
your
Is-
best guess is good enough.
They're purchasing the development rights of
Okay.
that property, is what they're doing.
Okay,
So that way it will be forever.
Not developed.
That's correct.
Okay.
It'll be- so no one will ever be able to build a home on it again. It will just be a natural space on the Green River.
Conserving the natural resources.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's right off the edge of Heinsberg,
yes.
leading down.
I
to
know
the
where they
river.
live.
And have they worked with the landowner?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, Jimmy Carl and
That's-
Yep.
Catherine
I mean,
Mason.
one of those letters, or one of the documents you sent, seemed to imply that they're working.
Absolutely.
This is
So
because the landowner is interested in.
that's correct. And so
Pursuing this avenue.
the past 6 months, it started first with Vermont River Conservancy. So they reached out to the landowner and have been cultivating a relationship with the landowners
Right.
over the past 6 months and have come to this agreement.
Great.
So
That's great.
there's no implications for the town as it's a piece of private property, but they're looking for support that the select board supports the conservation of natural spaces.
So do we need to have a motion about this, or we do? Well, I would like to
Yes.
motion that we send a letter of support.
And I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So nice to have something straightforward and clear.
If you would mind signing that, I will
Everybody
get it
likes
sent
it.
off.
It's not over our heads. doesn't
Better
have
connections.
initials.
Oh, I know, acronyms are the worst.
So you all received.
The way it's written, just Sheila will sign it on behalf of all
Great.
of you.
Okay. Thank you,
A
Sheila.
copious, this is actually the grant application that was done last week when Peter was ill. So I sent, actually this whole thing this is the grant application. So everybody's seen a copy of the application. I don't know if you want me to go into it in any detail, if you have any questions about it. I got amazing support from Wyndham Regional Commission in completing this grant application last week. And it kind of ties in with the old master plan for Algiers Village, which has, as they have noted, is more out of date now. It ties in with some of the stuff that's now going on with Friends of Algiers Village and the just the joint work of the nonprofits involved in Friends of Algiers Village. But it takes into consideration the fact that it says we're committed to supporting public centers, especially Algiers Village, and the stuff that is written in the town plan about encouraging development around the village of Algiers and Route 5. This is a planning grant and a feasibility study. Like it's a feasibility feasibility and planning grant in the amount of $55,000 for which the town would be responsible for 10% or $5,500. It is not an implementation grant, but we would get out of it an understanding of circulation, traffic circulation, pedestrian safety, and traffic calming for the village, a market potential and economic assets study for the village of Algiers, and a better understanding of how the village connects with Route 5, both physically and economically, so as to inform future growth. It's in line with a lot of other things going on, and I wanted to ask if people have questions.
Yes, can you just summarize for me what the budget is? Where's the 55,000?
The grant application is $55,000.
And where's that going?
The funding, it would go to the town to have this, to conduct the feasibility study. The town would be responsible for $5,500,
right,
if so awarded.
We would hire somebody to do this.
We would have to,
Absolutely.
yes. Yeah, it would be a consultant who would do that.
So we'd have administrative costs as well.
Yes, it would be part of the grant costs.
Are the administrative costs for the town part of the grant?
Pretty sure, but hang on. Kickoff meeting. So, yes, so the grant, for example, the analysis of existing transportation, the grant would cover $11,700 of that, and the town would match $1,300. So in each task, to do the study, the workshop demonstrations, to whoever we hire to do that, that's the cost of the task, and it's apportioned in here too.
Do we need to pay cash? Like what I'm asking is the $5,500 cash plus all getting the RFP out to whoever's doing this, dealing with requisitions. I mean, my question is sort of like, what are we matching and how are we matching it?
Because
I thought it was cash.
Yeah, I don't know that it is cash or if it's in kind. So, for example, would we ask Peter to do some of the administration or somebody else?
Right, and so
it doesn't say that in
the administrative costs were not put into the budget.
It
like
doesn't.
At 17% or something like that.
It is a cash match of 55.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's here, cash match. Sorry, didn't remember that.
So that's where the administrative cost is shown. It's going to cost $5,500 for the whole project, right?
Yeah.
Our cash match. So it's not
In-kind staff contributions and other federal or state funds are allowed, but may not be used toward the local cash match requirement.
So, I'm just trying to figure out our capacity. So that was I had different questions about the grant, but I had, my question is administrative capacity. Do we have the capacity to
We would absolutely have to hire
manage
somebody to do this. I don't think that.
So where do we get that money from?
So since this is a V-Trans grant and since it relates to traffic, I think we could probably, actually happened to be talking with Katie about this last week, and she suggested that we could use some highway surplus funds for this, very conceivably. So Peter and I have been going back and forth today about where are our highway surplus funds, because it's another fund.
Right, because I
It
didn't
is not
see them
in
our,
the fund
in our
thing.
reserve funds.
But there's a 010 account that has, I'm sorry, where's that document?
Don't forget you have to do this too.
Hang on, we're not there yet.
Yes, I understand. $374,000
in it.
No, it's not what the total is.
What is the total now? I'm sorry.
It's what we were discussing right before the meeting. Because that amount was in 16.
So did you say there's about 200 and something in it now?
That's correct.
So,
I can,
Okay,
if you-
have we talked to Dan? Because usually Dan has plans.
Yeah,
I mean,
well-
Dan's pretty badass with his budget, and he knows and he allocates extremely efficiently. So if my concern, does he think he has that money to use and it's already
Equipment
earmarked for
or
something else?
Yeah, so that's the part of the thing with the 010 budget is that we're not allowed to have a surplus legal under state statute in the highway budget. It has to be new every year. And so,
I thought it could roll over. I think it's actually the opposite, that we can't have it in the general fund, but highway gets to roll over automatically by state statute.
so we need to.
So maybe, I know,
this-
maybe we need clarification on all this.
So I only got to this question today, Gabby. I'm sorry, that was not one of the, as I started to explore the funds and see where we could pull the resources, the $5,500 from.
But do we have to be showing the $5,500 in our budget?
No, this is a concern for the select board. We don't have to prove to anybody in the grant application that we can do it.
It's
and
just questionable.
I actually think what we could do is approve the application, which is something that we need to do. And then if we can't find the $5,500 someplace, if we feel it's not, if it's going to be a burden to the town and no benefit to the town, then we don't have to accept the grant if they award it to us. But
I'd sort of be loath to go that approach. Either we think we can handle it and that's why we applied, or it looks like we're giving up grant money to somebody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah, that's not
Right,
good.
it's
Right,
either
you know-
important to, that this grant means something to the town of Guilford, and we'll find a way to
yeah,
so I think it just
Support it.
involves more investigation.
So what were your concerns,
Yeah.
Gabby? Because
That was one
we
of them.
might as well.
Yeah, I had questions too. I'll tell you, half the stuff in the grant I was surprised to read, which made me a little, I guess I was very disconcerted to find out the lack of process that was disregarded essentially. And then to find out half the things in the grant I'd never heard of before. So I was surprised as a municipality that we were representing these things. So I think that if there had been drafts and we'd had a discussion about what this was prior to actually applying, that it's probably a non-event. I believe in village revitalization. I believe in, approaching it the way we want to approach it. I just have concerns about how it was actually gone about going. Is that a sentence?
So
I know what you
let me
mean.
just tell you, Gabby, that when we were notified about it in December, we actually brought it up in this meeting. And then we said that Peter and I were going to meet, and then Peter and I met with Wyndham Regional, and they had given us a date certain that they were going to get some material to us so that we could then work with the select board 2 weeks ago. And the material was here, but I didn't know about it, and we didn't bring it to the select board on the 22nd. And when Peter was sick, I only found out that we were up against this hard deadline and had to step in.
I get it.
So I'm really sorry.
I'm just expressing my frustration,
Yeah.
and from this is community development, and the way my personal opinion about how to go about community development is engaging the community. That means talking to the planning commission, talking to the select board, and making it publicly noticed.
So this
That's
is
how,
going to be.
So I know it's after the fact, and that was, I know for when the Conservation Commission did their municipal planning grant, there was discussions with the Planning Commission. Linda and Susan James and I went to the Planning Commission, talked about what we were doing. Once they were okay with it, we talked about talk about with the select board so everybody's on board.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a preferred approach. I understand there were extenuating circumstances, but I just want to make that clear.
No, I totally
I mean,
agree
I
with
really
you.
feel strongly about community development and
Agreed,
revitalization.
agreed.
Totally agree with you.
So I just had a couple of questions.
That's
The first
a
one is
good
it
point.
says economic development is focused on reusing numerous empty and underutilized buildings in Algiers. And I was just wondering what those were.
I wonder if it was the old doggy daycare building.
Somebody revitalizing and reusing it.
Oh,
That's
I
already,
didn't-
It's
yeah,
in
that's,
use.
yeah.
They're
Oh, I
renovating.
didn't
So
know
I was just
whether they
wondering.
knew what was in there.
Really?
I was just wondering what that was discussing because
Really?
I honestly couldn't
Oh,
think of
I
any
wonder
buildings.
whether I'm just guessing
Yeah,
here.
and so I'm asking people who wrote the grant so they can
I
just tell
didn't
me.
know, okay.
So there is some possibility of some buildings being repurposed. And there have been discussions in the Algiers Village community. I happen to know these not as a select board member, but as something else, doing other things that it could be that some of the buildings near
B-bomb?
B barn and a residence or maybe two residences, and then nobody really knows what's happening with the old doggy daycare building. It's just, it looks like something's happening and then nothing happens for a really long time. So there's just some consideration, some thought that there may be some underused buildings that might be used differently if they were to be purchased by a different entity or something like that, to see what would happen to this, what would happen in this area.
Okay, yeah, no, I didn't,
Yeah.
that surprised me if there were empty, underutilized buildings, because I actually thought that was looking pretty good. The independent group developing a meat processing plant?
That was the one that I had not heard.
I'd never
mean,
heard of it too till I read the grant.
I
So,
thought I was
there
sort
are-
of agog at thinking about Algiers Village and a meat processing plant. I mean, I really want a meat processing plant available to the farmers nearby. I mean, and maybe I was not understanding what Algiers Village meant in terms of, I mean, it said in the grant that it was exploring the whole relationship of Algiers Village to Route 5.
Mm-hmm.
But I was sort of just surprised
So
about
this is something that came up citizen to citizen, that because I am married to somebody who processes meat, I know is a conversation going on in
Oh,
town.
I see, okay.
And so I was able to weave that into this grant application as is it feasible, is it
Oh, I
something
see.
that this town, that should be considered in town, but it would have to be citizen driven, it would not be anything that the select board would do, so.
And I
That's-
had been approached for a conversation on this because I process meat as well.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a great idea.
No, I mean, I just.
But
was
how it
just
fits
within the
in,
scope
no,
of
exactly.
Algiers
That's,
Village
that was my initial
confusing.
It's an odd
reaction
place for a
too, but
meat
it sounds like there is potential,
No,
to-
I mean,
It's got
I'm
sewer and
here
water,
for
and
it.
that's really the critical mass for an
Right.
operation like that.
Other questions, Gabby?
Yeah, so I didn't realize this, but it represented that in 2018 we're doing an economic asset survey. I was sort of taken
Where's-
aback by
where does
that,
it say
honestly.
Number 5?
Oh, no, that's I just,
Oh.
5 questions.
Where does it say that? Is that the implementation part of it, or is it in the text? Because I
It
don't
was in the
remember.
text. It was in the text.
Do you remember
So
where,
I
Gabby?
don't, but it's after whenever you disclose the meat processing.
God, you think I know this thing by heart now? It's got to be in some.
I don't remember.
Me either.
Well, no one knows about
No,
it.
I
whether
think maybe
there's
we're
an
not doing it.
economic
It's okay.
asset survey.
No, that says 2018, but that's something else. Just skimming it quickly.
Yeah,
Gabby,
no, sorry,
I don't.
Didn't write
I
down
mean-
the page.
It's something that people have been recommending for some time, but I don't know.
I mean, I just think if we're representing it, we should, it wasn't in that chart, it was in the text of the grant.
Okay.
Sorry. I don't know where, but just putting it out there that I wasn't aware that we were doing that.
Yeah, I don't think we've committed to doing it yet.
So, I mean, if we
I
can
don't
take
think
that out,
even
that'd be
raised
good.
the subject.
It's too late though. It's already been submitted.
I just did a search of the entire grant application, and there's no economic inventory as phrased as such.
Asset mapping,
Asset
economic
survey.
asset mapping, because it's something that's a term that's been tossed
Oh,
around.
asset mapping.
Economic asset mapping.
No, asset mapping is not either.
You made it up.
No, Gabby doesn't make
wish.
things up. Are you kidding? She's
On page 6, point B says conduct a market potential and economic asset study for
That's it.
Algiers.
oh, so that's an expected outcome of the study.
Oh, okay, so never mind, that's
Yeah,
fine.
that's not-
I thought that was something we were promising
Yeah.
to do.
No, no.
I did think that on page, see, I did write this down. Page 12, we had a question about open grants. And he said none. I don't believe that to be accurate. They asked about V-Trans and ACCD grants. My understanding is that CC4G has an open ACCD grant,
That is correct.
and that Better Back Roads, we have a V-Trans open grant.
And same with the grants and aid is also V-Trans.
Is that open?
Yes, the work is not.
It's
been
not completed?
Nope.
So then we need to, I mean, we neglected to, I mean, I would think they'd actually be really interested in that since
Yeah.
CC4G is a planning grant.
So if we agree to go forward with, if we adopt the resolution to do this, you need to amend this, Peter,
Yep.
to amend. Okay?
Yep.
And I think that will be fine. They were great about accepting,
So that's
delaying this
page
resolution.
12.
It's page 12, item 3. Thank you, Gabby.
I mean, my other question is what's the Planning Commission take on this? Because what was interesting is I said, I don't know what the Planning Commission's take on this, so I looked at our town plan, because to me, that's the only indication of what the town is supporting as far as planning.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's not inconsistent with the town plan, but I found it interesting that it also wasn't pulled out as a priority, and that in fact, getting a municipal planning grant for Guilford Center Village was a stated priority over and over again. So I guess I wanted to find out how did this fit in with, from the Planning Commission standpoint, with our town plan, and how would this affect them being able to actually implement what is in the town plan, which would be getting a municipal planning grant.
So the Planning Commission is considering this on Monday next week, and they will go through the same resolution discussion and process. And so they've got the application, so they're going to be asking some of the same questions. In terms of the town plan, it is, I mean, we did point out where it is consistent with the town plan in the grant
And it-
application.
right.
Also, the town plan was written basically in 2014 and approved in June of 2015. And so we are now, 4 years later, we have different grant possibilities and different opportunities that are coming to the town. We looked at whether this could help Algiers Guilford Center. I mean, we did have that discussion, and we could not tie it together, but I think that it will accrue benefits to that.
Right, and I guess I just want to, I mean, this is the town, I mean, I guess saying like, oh, our town plan priorities have changed offline, to me is a slippery slope, because we're representing that this is our town plan when we get grants, or if we didn't want energy cited somewhere. So, I mean, my opinion is that the town plan is the town plan, and we need to sort of stick with it. So I guess if the Planning Commission could sort of answer and figure out why, how this affects their priorities,
Well, they're taking it up next Monday, you said.
Yeah.
then I think it'd be helpful if they could, I mean, I would, sort of punt to the Planning Commission.
Well, we have to have both resolutions. We have to have a resolution from the Select Board and a resolution from the Planning Commission.
Because right now, I mean, it's not inconsistent, it's consistent with general propositions made in our town plan. And I believe, like, density in the villages makes sense. All of that
Yeah.
makes sense. But it's not pulled out as a priority, and other things are. So I just want to, I mean, I'm just grappling with that. If this is what the town is telling me to do as the select board, 5 people saying something other than the town plan, I'm fine with it as long as there's a reason.
Could part of this be driven by the fact that the grant is available? Is a planning commission going to shift priorities based on, what grants are available when and
Yeah, well, this is a standard
Grant.
problem that organizations
But that's
have.
my
that,
point.
how do
that
you
we're
be-
always going to be in flux.
It's about opportunism and how
Right.
opportunistic do we
Right.
want to be in
Right.
chasing down funding. I mean, the organization that I work for, that was one of the chief problems, issues that we always had.
Right.
We were dependent on philanthropy, and whether you go for the grant, even though it's not in the strategic plan or not, but it's bringing in funding, right? But
I
this
agree.
leads me to one other thing I'd like to say is that after this discussion, what we still need to have, and we've talked about doing this before, is a process for putting proposals forward that has standards, and so that this doesn't happen in the future where that there's a certain understanding of how a proposal goes through the
I think
pipeline.
that's a great, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
So
And
And it's an operating procedure.
I think it's a great idea. So to partially answer your question, Gabby, today I pulled out of the town plan, so I have a document that I pulled out the select board responsibilities in the town plan, and I did that in preparation for a future discussion on what the select board's role is in the Guilford economy, which I do not want to have a big discussion about tonight. But so we are in. I had excerpted this some time ago, like in 2014 or 2015. We are to work closely with local, state, and federal experts to understand demographic, economic, and environmental patterns and trends that will shape our future and affect and impact the town's infrastructure. So that's number one. We are to, looking at the economy, we have to work together to create and or acquire physical space and complementary online, facilitate multiple trades and service businesses. The select board is supposed to work on telecommunications.
I mean, I guess I get it.
Transportation.
It's consistent with broad policies, but the things that are sort of pulled out, I was just struck that this wasn't, but there was something else, and I was just trying to figure out how does that all fit together. I mean, the other funny thing about town plans is that they're completely aspirational. You have to do
Right.
anything in them,
Right.
right? So that's why I wanted to read from the Planning Commission.
No,
That was my
I
only
think that makes a lot of sense.
thought
Yeah.
along that.
So we just have to wait till they meet next week. They got the information at the same time as we all did here, so.
And it was my understanding that some of the momentum behind this grant came from citizen concerns about the speed of the new bridge and looking at the safety of citizens of Algiers and how the walkability, for lack of a better word, had to do with businesses in the village, current and perhaps future businesses. So there was a clear citizens' push, you might say, to find a way to address and understand the speed, and then there was the attempt to move out of silo thinking, to be able to link economic issues with safety issues. And maybe that isn't like thrillingly inspiring in terms of the town plan, but it isn't, to me, frivolous or just a low priority. The bridge was one of our major projects of 2017, and the fallout from the bridge is our business.
By the way, do we have those citizen complaints documented somewhere I could take a look?
Yep, we do. Specifically, besides
How did we get them then?
most of them have been via phone call.
And we don't document that? That might be a good thing to document, like if there are citizen complaints, you just put it in an email or something so that when we are trying to fix a problem, we know what the complaints were, by whom and when.
A couple of them were emailed to you guys, and then a couple of them have been discussed at previous select board meetings. Not all of the residents identified themselves when speaking on the phone.
We should just get that information so we can, just have it
So where are we with this issue? So can we,
thank you.
Gabby, have you?
Sorry.
No, I just, yeah, it seems to me that we'll wait for the planning commission and then try and figure out what is going on with our reserve fund and where we're getting the funds from.
But did you want a resolution?
We need to do the resolution tonight because it has to be there. Oh my God, what did I tell you, Gabby? Maybe we don't need to do it tonight. Maybe we could do it on the 26th. But I want to just make sure about that.
Yeah, check when the planning commission meets and then.
No, I know when they meet next week.
Monday.
Oh,
Monday.
so then,
But I want to, because I had negotiated with Jackie to get our.
You were afraid this needed to be in before our next meeting,
oh,
so we wouldn't have the input
Yeah,
from the
that's what I,
planning
and
commission.
and you had asked me and I answered you. Gabby.
You don't need tons anymore, dude.
You don't remember what I answered you, Gabby?
no, I don't.
All right, it's going to take me a minute to look.
So the question is whether we need to resolve this tonight, or we
Or
can wait
whether
till
we
the
can
planning
wait for-
commission.
And find out about our funds, yeah.
Yeah, the $5,500.
Well, plus whatever else and where that's coming from and get our funds straight.
Why would it be more than $5,500 for this particular grant proposal?
Well, plus we're doing administrative costs, right? I mean, if you can count it or not
I
count
think
it, right?
the
If it's
administrative
in-kind
costs
time.
are built into that 5,500.
That's what I thought.
If you look at the,
Can't be, but it can't be if it's not in kind.
In other words, you didn't quantify the hours of work
No.
it would take to.
all right. I had a telephone conversation with Jackie, which is why I don't remember. That's why I have to find what I wrote you.
No, that's.
She said we have to get it approved at the next select board meeting. 'Cause they are meeting on the 26th of February. So, and that's our next meeting. So we have to do it tonight, and the planning commission has to do it next week. They're not gonna make the decision, but they, all the materials have to be there on the 26th of February. So, I think, the resolution is, so personally, I think this is a great opportunity for the town to really do something that would benefit the residents. And I think we can, because we have been so prudent in saving money in different funds, I think that we can probably find, without much difficulty, money in excess funds, that we can do something to balance things out with Danny and the equipment, and that we have to, we don't just need equipment, we need to understand what's happening in the whole town, and we have a responsibility to the whole town. So, but I don't know where this is going to lead. It's not an implementation grant; it's a planning grant and a feasibility study. So we would, whether or not we actually go ahead with anything, we stand to benefit from this process. The resolution that they're asking for says. We may receive an award of fund, whereas blah blah, we may, does everybody read the resolution, or do you want me to read it to you?
I haven't read it.
Okay, it's the last page
It
of
was
the.
page 12 or 9 of the document.
Whereas the municipality of Guilford, Vermont is applying for funding as provided for in the fiscal 2018-2020 budget, state budget, and may receive an award of funds under said provisions. And whereas the Agency of Transportation and the Department of Housing and Community Development may offer a grant agreement to this municipality for said funding. And whereas the municipality is maintaining its efforts to provide local funds for planning purposes, or that the municipality has voted at an annual or special meeting to provide local funds for planning purposes, now therefore be it resolved that the legislative body of this municipality enters into and agrees to the requirements and obligations of this grant program, including a commitment to provide a cash match of 10% of the project cost. That is the resolution.
10%, I thought it
That's
was
5,500.
5%.
5,500,
55,000 is 10%
It
of
did say
50%.
5%, but it's 10%.
Oh, okay.
What was the last whereas that you read?
The municipality is maintaining its efforts to provide local funds for planning purposes, or that the municipality has voted at an annual or special meeting to provide funds for planning purposes.
I would also just put out there that if considering your questions around where to find the funding, that the capital fund could also be a potential source of resources to pay for the town portion of that.
Mhm.
And that is the capital fund, which gets renewed every year, not the reserve fund.
So the question is, to do this, is we're looking at an investment of $5,500 plus some other cost, which we don't totally understand would be, but it's not, it's administrative to get this process moving, correct? Is Peter, that's your understanding from the time you spent on this?
I have spent probably the least amount of time on this.
Okay, that's right, Sheila stepped in.
I mean,
Thank you, Sheila, for
because what I
doing
mean,
this all
I mean, we had 5 weeks from the point that we were notified about the potential to apply to this and when the deadline was.
Right.
And the first 2 weeks of it were waiting for our first meeting. Then we had our meeting, and then Wyndham Regional did the initial draft for us, and then I got sick.
So I don't think, I mean, I think the process is done and it's not helpful to revisit this over and over again. I mean, I'll make the motion to sign the resolution and agree to make the match, but I'm gonna make it clear that this is the only time that that procedure needs to be followed from now on. This is, I get there's times when there should be an exception. I'm not sure this is one of them, quite frankly, but I do believe in the grant.
I second.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Please sign it.
Can we have the minutes show, however, that my comment that this needs to lead to?
I think you should, are you gonna drive that process?
I can.
fundraising expert.
Yeah,
That's what I mean, he should,
So,
I think
but
that's
we
a
need to
great
be
solution.
cognizant and remember that we said that we want to
We're
do
gonna
this.
do it, and we're gonna-
This
right.
is the second time it's come up, because this is going to avoid this kind of thing. There'll be a
Right.
pipeline and there'll be certain sign-offs which have to occur in order for a proposal to go forward.
Well, and which were part of the grant requirements anyway. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
there was a process.
Yeah.
It just was completely neglected.
But we have to adopt a process as a select board.
To ensure that it occurs.
Right?
I
Do you
mean,
disagree?
I don't disagree. I actually think there was a process that we had to follow in order to actually get the grant done. But the thing is, I mean, I feel like we talk a talk, we need to walk the walk, right?
Mhm.
If we're talking about communication, if we're talking about being part of a community, we need to do it.
Yeah, because this is definitely a community
Absolutely.
initiative
Absolutely.
for the community.
Yeah, and it's awesome. It's a cool grant. But we had to have a discussion about all this other crap,
Yeah.
which doesn't make it as exciting.
And we have to remember, we're talking about a feasibility study. so-
Yeah, but it's still cool.
No, I mean, so it's not like a signed, sealed, and delivered
No, it doesn't
changing
mean
of
we're
the
gonna get
Algiers
it, right?
village, right?
Right?
It's just what's feasible to do there.
Excuse me. The next thing on the agenda is Wyndham Regional Commissioner updates. So we are running way behind. Would we like to table this until next week?
Yeah, I would.
Table?
Yeah, there's nothing urgent.
Okay,
In my
great, thank you. Did you do warrants tonight? Yeah,
You want me to run through them, Gavin?
Oh yeah, I ran through them. They all look
Do you-
fine to me.
Do you wanna,
You can go for it. Yeah.
I will present them then. So I'd like to make a motion to pay the following warrants: payroll weekend in 1/28/17 for $6,848.05. Payroll week ending 2/4/17 in the amount of $6,946.15. Payroll week ending 2/11/17 in the amount of $5,880.72. An expense warrant 1815 of $33,288.10 for a grand total of $52,963.02. I ran through the expense warrant 1815 and didn't see anything significantly large. It was mostly sand, salt, and the loaner backhoe that made up the majority of that, or a chunk outside of normal expenses.
Second.
Thank you, Gabby. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The communications that I had a phone call from a resident on Butternut Hill about traffic safety at a particular corner, and I said if she would like to get on the agenda for tonight, she needed to follow certain procedure, and I did not hear from her, so we'll table that until we hear something.
I
Excellent.
have a communication. Hold on. I lost it.
Where's your communication,
I lost
Gabby?
Was it in this
Again,
pile?
I've got it. Was a little post-it.
While you're
Postcard.
looking for yours, I have a brief one. It's just, as has happened in the past, we were notified by the Department of Environment Conservation that 2 wastewater and potable water supply permits were drawn.
There it is. You're right.
Sorry.
So,
Thank you.
So I had actually 2. One is that as part of the Green River Watershed Alliance, there's a snowshoe walk on Sunday, February 18th. And it's a little preview because they're going to come talk to the select board about what they're actually doing and all of their plans. At a later date, I know they've been in contact with Peter to be scheduled.
yep, the 26th.
The other thing is I just got this, save the date, May 4th for, I don't know what they're calling this, but it's a bike ped downtown sort of symposium. Walk bike thing. So if anybody's interested,
What's
there's
the
a
date?
postcard. May 4th?
Who's
Oh, May
hosting it?
4th.
Downtown Guilford or downtown Brattleboro?
No, it's in White River Junction. It's the Walk Bike Summit.
It's a little
Okay.
far for me.
Yeah.
Bike?
You have to drive there, but you're gonna.
So we need an executive
I so
motion
move.
to enter into executive session at
move.
8:16
No, it's not 8:16.
p.m. Whatever time it is,
8:06.
8:06 p.m. And then you're not joining.
Perfect.
Oh, you
To
don't-
discuss personnel matters.
Oh, I thought I was joining.
No.
Okay.
Now you can so move.
I so move.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Second?
Thank you,
Let's
Gabby.
see, have I got all of it? Oh, I agree.
I am.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so it is 8:07. We are ready to come out of executive session at 8:36 p.m. And the select board decided to take no action at this time. So I would happily entertain a
I so move
motion
that we adjourn.
for
Second?
adjournment. That would be Richard and Gabby. And
You can hear the stomachs growling all
Yeah.
over the table.
All in favor?
meeting is adjourned at 8:37 p.m.
You talking
Oh,
about vote?
can I?
Aye.
All in favor? Sorry.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 8:37 p.m.